Hi everyone, this is Artie from the Human Chapters. I'll give you a bit of an introduction about Human Chapters. Humans are living narratives with a past, present, and future. These narratives constitute of a number of chapters across a lifespan. The aim of these conversations is to highlight a chapter of the narrative and unpack its connections to other chapters. I don't care whether people are natural storytellers, but I truly do believe that every single one of us has a story to tell. We'll do an acknowledgement to country. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, past and present and emerging. We celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. And today I'd love to welcome Deb, and Deb's chapter is Autism. Go for it, Deb.
Thank you. Thanks, Artie. So hi everyone, my name's Deb. I was diagnosed with autism 2 years ago, but obviously as it's a neurological difference, like a different sort of brain type, I did not just develop it in the last 2 years. I've had autism all my life. I'm 44 and I have two kids, and I talk a lot about autism on my social media, and I've just started to get a little bit of get some work published, and so lots of stuff going on.
Beautiful. Deb, tell me, how did you diagnose, or why did you get a later diagnosis for autism?
I think this is common for a lot of women on the autism spectrum, is that for some reason, well, there's a lot of reasons. I think it's kind of the way our society, the patriarchy is set up, is that women tend to be the nurturers, the caregivers, the ones who take, even from an early age, the ones who take the emotional temperature of the room, see how everyone's going, and try and adapt to that. So I certainly, from a young age, would change my behaviour to fit the situation, or what I thought would be appropriate for that situation. Whereas typically in boys and men, it can present a lot differently. But then there's no hard and fast rules when it comes to people, because the minute you start to make a generalization, you kind of leave people out. But yeah, I think, and in the autism community, we call that masking. So it is strategies that we would use to seem neurotypical, like scripts we might have learned on, social behavior. Like if someone asks, "How are you?" then often they just want to hear, "I'm good, how are you?" But then that might, sometimes that might be different depending on your relationship. As an autistic person, I like when things follow patterns. I like it when people are predictable, but then I'm extremely unpredictable myself. So it can be quite difficult. But yeah, I think one of the things that I struggle with is just a lot of intense feeling all the time. It can be really hard to figure out why and what it is, and ways to channel that positively.
Yeah. And those intense feelings you're talking about, what do they feel like in your body, or like, yeah, how would you
So,
explain?
so um, at at their worst, they can feel like intense physical pain. Yeah, I've had a bit of a hard week with just some personal challenges, and so because I'm a mum, there's just lots of stuff going on with my kids. I just kind of have to keep on going, and I just know that there's this intensity in my brain and in my body, but I can't access what it is or why it is, because I have to sort of, cook dinner and take my kids places and take them to appointments and talk to people about what's happening in their lives and in my life. But what typically happens is that they will, my kids go to my ex-husband, and there's a meme about autism where it says, brain, it's like, brain, feel this feeling, and me, what feeling? And the brain says, feelings, big feelings. And you're like, can you be more specific? And the brain says, feel this feeling. And that's really what it's like sometimes. So yesterday I knew that I had to rest, because I was in a lot of pain, like a lot of physical joint pain. And a lot of autistic women in particular can end up with a chronic pain condition called fibromyalgia, because it's really a brain emotion pain that manifests as chronic physical pain. So yeah, yesterday I had plans to catch up with a friend, but I just thought, I can't do that. I can't be around people because I know that I'm feeling really intensely, and I guess I want to kind of protect people and myself from reacting in a way that might not be socially appropriate. And it's hard because I want to connect with people, I want to have a normal social life, but I know that I just have to kind of isolate a little bit in order to just process things physically. So yesterday I just rested a lot, and that was hard because I find it hard to look after myself. Sometimes I think, well, you're just lying here, you're not doing anything. What's wrong with you? But I've learnt to kind of try and talk to myself, have a self-talk that's a lot nicer, just sort of saying, look, you're doing a really good job. You had a really hard week. It's going to be okay. And then this morning, right on time, because I've had time away from people and around, where I've really been able to control what's happening in a sensory way. All of a sudden, I'm beginning to be able to make sense of these feelings and understand that it's, it's loneliness. It's, it's a need for connection. But I can't actually connect with people until I process these things. And that's what a lot of autistic people struggle with, is processing information and dealing with it in an appropriate way. And I cry a lot whenever I talk about my feelings, and that's not, a sign that I'm having a nervous breakdown or anything. It's just a sign that, my feelings are coming out. I think they've done imaging of autistic brains and shown that, in the processing area, we just get overloaded. So everything's amplified. Every bit of information I receive orally, visually, in all of the senses, it's amplified, and it's hard for me to make sense of what I'm seeing. And my brain likes patterns, and there just aren't patterns, especially when you're dealing with children. Both of them have been have been finding COVID hard, and so have I. So it's just all of these feelings, you know, and I can get really paranoid when I'm in this stage of processing where I'm like, I'm never going to feel part of things again, or, you know, my friends will hate me because, I guess in the past I've had experiences and social experiences, especially as a teenager, where my my quietness, my need to understand things has, or, you know, just not understanding the joke, has meant that I've been excluded from parties, or that people have said I was weird. And so I see that in my kids as well. They can be really scared that their friends, you know, my gorgeous little 6-year-old, she can really, you know, she can just sob her heart out if her best friend's not, because they talk via Messenger, kids Messenger. If her friend's not available, even if she might have talked to her for hours and hours the previous day, she'll just be like, she'll sob her heart out for, you know, maybe an hour, and say, oh, she's forgotten me, she doesn't care about me. And I just think, oh, I know that feeling, you know. Yeah, I know that feeling. But I guess, you know, I've learned that my feelings and my thoughts aren't always fact. And that whilst I might not always like the way that I need extra time and extra space, it's just a fact. It's just a fact, and it's just the way I am. And if I try and, you know, I used to just power on, and used to just, you know, I'd go to the gym, I'd be doing everything, I'd just be really, you know, on all the time, and I couldn't sustain it, and I would end up having a meltdown. And I like to try and prevent myself from having meltdowns these days. And I knew I wanted to do this this human chapter this morning, but at the same time I was like, I don't want to do it. What if everyone thinks I'm an idiot? You know, there's always this harsh inner critic. But I've learned to sort of deal with her and go, well, no, you know, Artie's a lovely person. You know, she's not going to be like, oh, why do you do that? You know, or anything like that. And anyone who has autism will understand what you're talking about. And anyone who doesn't, look, you know, the reason I talk about autism is because it's been such, you know, it's really hard. And a lot of the ways I behave don't make a lot of sense unless you view them through a lens of a neurological, not disorder, but a different neurological subtype, you know? So if I keep in mind that my brain is different and that I just can't, you know, I look at, and that's, yeah, that's sometimes one of the things I struggle with when I'm withdrawing from things to process. I can obsess over things on social media and be like, well, look at that person, they're doing that, and why can't I do that? Why is my house a mess? Why can't I do that? And yeah, and then again, it's down to the part of like, just be kind to yourself. Yeah, it's hard. I think everyone finds that hard, but I think that intensity of feeling makes it even harder sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, Deb. So I just want to reassure you and tell you I don't have a diagnosis of autism, but I am equally a weirdo. No, well, not equal, but yeah, I've embraced that and gone, you know what? People I truly do believe people are going to think what they're going to think anyway. And that's regardless. Sometimes it's regardless of how good a person you are or what their perception is. And at the end of the day, it's just it's their perception. And
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
So no, I've known you for quite some time now, since last year. And I just, yeah, to be quite honest, I would love to have more chats and go, so what is this like? And just berate you with a lot of questions. Yeah. And so I absolutely welcome this opportunity to ask them openly and honestly. And yeah, it was so nice to learn a little bit about how difficult these situations are, that we might take for granted. But this year has been really unique in that I think every like people have had big feelings and not knowing what's happening from day to day, which has caused those big feelings. I can only imagine, yeah, what other people and how they're experiencing it.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it has. It's been really hard because I've got a lot of, I've got friends and family in Melbourne I haven't seen for a long time, and um, I just my mum and dad live in Albury, and I would love to go over and see them, but the borders aren't open. And yeah, it's just really difficult. It is, and it's been a hard year for everybody. I think when we're in our own little bubble, we can feel like, and that's where social media is hard, because we can look at it and think, well, look at all these people, but then I'm comparing my insides to their outsides, and who knows, maybe if I put some makeup on and went outside, then I could take a good, take a good picture. One of the other things that I found really challenging is that I don't know. I think so. A week ago, 18 months ago, I'd done a story about Parents Next program and how I had to get I had to go through this educational program in order to get the single parent pension, because my daughter was getting to an age where I was at 6, you're supposed to be either studying. When your youngest child's 6, if you get the single parent pension, you have to either be studying or working in order to get assistance. So it was really, I had a lot of fear around going back into a work environment and even having that confidence, because, my daughter has some intense needs that I look after. And just the idea of having to combine that with working was really full on. So yeah, I did an interview about that just for ABC radio, and then last week I got a phone call from a producer for the 7:30 report just saying, "Hi, we hear that you're from Shepparton. There's more cases." And I hadn't talked to anyone on the phone in a long time, and I struggle with phone calls, but this woman was really lovely. And so I just kept talking about my life, and she was like, "Wow, I love the way that you're articulating things. And I'm a producer and you've made great TV." And I was like, "Wow, this is one of my dreams come true." All the times I've ever stood in the shower and imagined being interviewed, "So Deb, what was it like when you went through the pandemic?" Well, I'm glad you asked, and yeah, just thinking, oh, I'm going to be famous. So I didn't even really think that. I was just excited about someone, and yeah, so they said they were going to send a producer down to film me, and I was like, wow, that'll be great. Yeah, and unfortunately, I didn't really think about the impact that would have on my daughter. And it really frightened her, but she couldn't articulate that at the time. Um, I guess because I don't really have people over to the house because it she doesn't like it, and, I'm kind of her safe space where she can process her feelings, and she has, complete access to me all the time. I was so excited about, just having an adult conversation that I didn't even think that it would impact her, and, I asked my son if he wanted to be involved with it, and he said no, which is fair enough. And I'm always glad when my kids say no to me because it means that they are comfortable in setting their own boundaries. And they're not just going to do what I want them to because they want to be seen as good, which is my stuff. So, yeah, she has had a really hard week, and I didn't know what was going on. And then finally, after about a week of really challenging behavior, she said, "I didn't like it when the man came to our house." And, um, yeah, it was really hard. It's really hard because I, you know, I absolutely I don't resent her for that. I understand it. I understand it because there's lots of times when something has happened to me and I haven't been able to verbalize, but then say a week later, once I've processed it, I've said, I didn't like that. And people have been like, but you seemed to be fine with it. Like, if you look at the bit on the 7:30 report, she was, she was performing for the camera. She was so happy. But is just testament to the fact that we can put on our socially acceptable behavior, but at great cost sometimes. Yeah, and so I mean, I should have known that that change is hard. Change is hard for us, but I thought she would like being on TV, and I think she did like being on TV, but she didn't like someone being at our house. And and it was only sort of talking it through with a friend of mine who also has a child with special needs. And she said, "Do you think Steph might have been upset by the cameraman or the person coming to your house?" And I was like, "Oh gosh, I hadn't even thought about that," because she seemed to be so happy. But yeah, and I asked her and she said, "Yes, I did. Like, I don't want him to come to my house ever again." And then I can be really hard on myself, and just think, oh, gosh, you I don't know.
And yet, as you're talking about that particular social situation of being interviewed by, a reporter, and the different elements within that one situation, a new person coming in, asking questions, having, and a different setup as well, like for the telly, just trying to think, put those elements in perspective and go, it is actually really difficult for someone that isn't used to, and it could be anyone that isn't used to a drastic change. But for us, it might be, oh, yeah, okay, cool, come in. And we might sort of just not, I think, yeah, that processing time is probably less. And so you just, it's quicker. And we go, oh, yeah, okay, this is all fine. But we don't realize how many different elements there are in one situation that can impact
Yeah,
another person. And that's really, thank you for bringing that to light, because that's, it's beneficial for everyone to actually maybe even have a look at it. Why do people act the way they do or behave the way they do? And a lot of the times there's a strong, they're trying to communicate something. It's, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, and um, yeah, so that's, I mean, it was, I have a real tendency to sort of be black and white in my thinking as well. And I went to a talk by Tony Atwood, who does a lot of stuff around autism in females. And he said that in adolescence, a lot of autistic teenagers will form this negative filter around themselves, and it will be very powerful. And they'll become very attached to this negative filter, or the fact that they're wrong or stupid or bad or weird, and that they won't really want to let it go. And he said, you know, what forms this filter is not parents, it's not the education, it's just peer interactions. And when I heard that, it just spoke to the heart of my experience in school, and also up till this point, because because children can be so unkind to each other. And as an autistic person, you're just a little bit different, and it's like how dogs can smell fear. Children can tell the children who aren't quite on the same page, who don't quite belong, who are weird. And the worst thing you can be as a child is weird, because you're set apart. And so I had to leave the talk, because I was just so overcome with emotion, because it just spoke to the fact that I've thought of myself as bad or wrong for all of my life, and I never knew why. And I was quite attached to this idea that I was wrong. So yeah, when something like that happens with my daughter, I can become very attached to the idea that I'm wrong or bad, or that, I'm just not a very good mother, and that I should have known that would happen. So yeah, as with a lot of autistic females, or teenagers, I was bullied a lot. I'm very tall. I'm just under 6 foot, and I've got naturally red curly hair, and I like big words. So that's pretty much a formula for a lot of teasing. I got called Ronald McDonald, Afro, fat. Fat's always one that hurts a lot, because I guess we live in a society where, being overweight or taking up space is a real insult. A lot of women see themselves as fat, or when they may not be. Fat has become a word to denote social unacceptability, or a negative self-concept, when it's actually not a moral judgment. Fat is not a moral judgment. It's just a fact. You might have, but it has become such a moral judgment. And are you being good? Are you eating the right food? All that sort of stuff. Don't get me started on that. But yeah, so I got teased a lot. I always felt very, if I opened my mouth, that I would say the wrong thing. So that was when I discovered alcohol as about a 17-year-old, and that was a way for me to just stop feeling everything so very deeply, and stop judging myself, and just really let just anesthetize all these feelings, and just try and be social. Yeah.
And Deb, just sort of, when you said that you got bullied, did it become worse as the years went by? Like, from if you're thinking about primary school through to secondary school, did it just keep escalating or
I think my parents moved. We moved when I was 11, and I don't know if that would have been a harder year for me anyway. The year 7, I was already, puberty is really. I can remember feeling very disappointed in my body for betraying me, for all these changes that were happening, like pimples or suddenly body odor. I also developed boobs really early, so I was teased a lot for that. I can remember, yeah. So I think, in a sense, once puberty happens, yeah, I can remember being 10 years old, and I wanted to play netball because I liked it, but I wasn't very coordinated, and the netball team that I joined, they called me Big Tits, and they'd be like, "Oh, catch the ball, big tits," and God, it made me so repulsed by my own body. Yeah, it was really, and to someone else that may not have, they would have been like, "Oh well, just shrug it off and laugh at it," but I couldn't. It just, yeah, it was just so awful, and um, I used to actually fantasize about going on TV so that I could, and like I'd be on TV, I'd be famous, and then they would want to be my friend. So that was the solution for everything as a teenager, to be famous. And so I think even maybe some of that was tied up in the idea of, like, someone wants to interview me, oh wow, people are going to take notice. And I mean, they did. My friends were all very lovely about it, but it was, to get it in perspective, it's not like I have my own chat show now. It was amazing, but it was like 5 seconds or 5 minutes maybe, and it didn't really change anything in my life. So, in fact, it made my week worse because I was also very stressed out about how I was going to look. I was trying to cover up. I was thinking I'll cover up because one of my most hated body parts that I'm coming to terms with is my arms. They've always been, a little bit bigger. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? It's a hot day. Am I going to cover up my arms? What am I going to do? Am I going to be upset because they see my arms? And oh gosh, this obsessive thinking, my arms, what am I going to do? And so I actually made, I'm talking to myself nicely. I'm thinking, whatever you wear, you're not going to be 100% happy with how you look on TV. So just wear something that you like, and just remind yourself that you're not going to suddenly look like a supermodel, because sometimes the idea of what I look like in my head and what I actually look like, if I see a video or a picture of myself and it doesn't look like me to me, the idea of me that I have in my head, I can get really distressed by that, because I'm like, is that really me? That's not how I feel that I look in my head. Yeah, so I had to sort of talk to myself, well, no, it's all right. You've made this choice to go on TV, and you can't suddenly, whip out the vacuum cleaner and do arm liposuction or anything like that. So just, be kind to yourself, and they're not talking to you because, and there were bits in it that I would have been absolutely destroyed by years ago. Like, yeah, some of the camera angles I would have really gone to town on myself about. I would have been like, oh my God, how can I walk around looking like that? But yeah, and so there's that too, just risking being visible is a big deal sometimes. Especially when I'm talking about autism. And I mean, it's something that I've devoted my life to for the past at least 6 years. When my son was diagnosed with it in 2014, and that was the year my daughter was born as well. So I've been learning about it for a long time, but I don't have any formal qualifications in that area. Not like and I think I'm reasonably good at articulating some of the things and writing about it. But then I can like compare myself to other autism advocates and think, gosh, what am I even doing talking about this? But yeah, that's just another aspect of my not so nice brain. Sometimes I have to really temper it and say, look, just you're talking about your experience, so that can never be wrong.
That's it. Your experience and your family's experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Deb, I was going to ask you, sorry, taking you a few steps back, you mentioned today in particular, this morning was quite difficult, and you've been preventing meltdowns. What does a meltdown in an adult like? So for yourself, what does it look like?
Yeah. Okay. So there are 3 types of ways that autistic people will have meltdowns. They will fight, flight, or freeze. So you either become very angry and attack people, or you just nope out of the situation, or you just freeze and you just can't say anything. I've got friends who do all 3. But I, unfortunately, or I don't know, I fight. And the way that is triggered is that I will get too much sensory information happen, and it's really easy to be in that place with kids, because there's lots of noise, lots of information. I think a lot of even neurotypical people struggle with all of the information and forms and bits of paper that you have to keep track of as a parent. Pardon me. So it would just be, I haven't had a chance to process all of this information. So there's information coming in visually, orally. So I'm reading things and processing them. For instance, I know that this is a weird one, well, a good one. When I know that when I'm overwhelmed in a sensory way, I can't wear certain fabrics because they will just feel, if something is slightly scratchy, if it has a thread in it that I feel, that will contribute to a sense of overwhelm and sensory overload. And so yeah, and then because I have a chronic pain condition, if I'm in any sort of chronic pain and then I've got stuff on top of that, then it's really just building up and building up until I get to a point where someone will say something that to them will be completely unrelated to what I'm going through. The most recent meltdown I had, someone was trying to help, but they said something that triggered my thought that I'm not doing a good job as a parent. And I just said, I go red in my neck. I was very angry and I yell and I swear, and it's an out of body experience for me. I'm not in control of what's happening. It is terrifying. It's really, it has destroyed friendships in the past, because I just say every single awful thing I've ever thought about that person. And it's really, afterwards, I feel intense shame, and just that I want to, pull my skin out and, just, ugh, I just want to disappear. I've learned a lot of strategies over the years for dealing with these meltdowns. I know that when I'm feeling emotionally low, I'm more likely to have a meltdown, which is why I think the past 18 hours I've spent away from people, because I know that I've been feeling really needy, and I know that that's when I need to just show up for myself and really look after myself. But it's tedious and it seems to take a long time. And I cry. I hate crying so much. But, I've just had to accept. And I think, I forget who said it. I remember a quote saying, I cry a lot, and that's not because I'm weak. It's because I'm paying attention. And there's a lot to cry about. So, it's all right to cry. It's all right. It really is. Yeah. And for a lot of years, I just thought of myself as crazy. You're crazy. And, but I'm not. I'm not crazy. I just have a lot of difficulty with life, and I'm not the only one. A lot of us do too. But I guess the other thing is, not a lot of people are, well, I'm just honest about the way I feel and what happens for me, because, well, one, because I like talking about myself. Who doesn't? But two, but two, if I'd heard someone else talk like this about how they felt in such honesty, then I would have felt like, oh gosh, that's the way I feel. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I do that, because I don't know. I just want to help educate people. It's been such a long sort of journey, learning so much about myself, and just having these feelings and wanting to not have them. But yeah, it is very normal. I think there's a lot of undiagnosed women out there who have been sort of fobbed off with the idea that they have some sort of generalized anxiety problem or anger issues. And sure, they may have those, but sometimes they're part of autism. And it's really largely undiagnosed, particularly in women my age. And I wouldn't have sought an autism diagnosis for myself. I thought that autism was, I guess, if I'm going to be brutally honest, I kind of thought that, stuff like that was kind of made up, and that was people just making excuses. That probably not that bad. And I guess that's why I want to talk about it, because I can come across as really, professional and really well spoken, but it's at a great cost. A friend of mine suggested that I go. They were doing auditions for Love on the Spectrum, and I'm single. One of my friends said, you should do that, and I thought, after having this experience of being on 7:30 report for like 5 minutes, I was like, no way. It would take so much processing for me to have, I would love it. On some level, I would love to be part of something like that, but I would also be really, really, and I would be really invested in what people thought of me, and that's not healthy for my self-esteem. I need to just not get it so high, because then it will drop down. And and I need to be able to look after myself, and I need to be able to look after my kids. And if part of that is just not pursuing things that change our household, then that's the sacrifice I'm willing to make, because it impacts me as well then when I need to look after their needs. So yeah.
One of the things I wanted to acknowledge you for, Deb, is when you said to be honest about what you're going through. We know that we're not, we see it feels like we're alone in the world in experiencing what we're experiencing. But as you've been talking, I've been going, my mental checklist is going, yes, yes, that is also correct, that is also correct. Social media, yes, you look at a picture and for face, or just that face value, oh, everything's 100%, and we know it's not. My brain is going, yeah, a lot of what you've talked about, even body image issues, all of those things. I'm going, yep, I to some extent I can empathize with you. But if we don't talk about these things, then we seem like we're all alone. But if we start to
Yeah.
talk about them, we know that actually there are more people relate to it and connect to it, because guess what? It doesn't matter whether you have a diagnosis or not. Lots of people are actually going through these things, and
Yeah,
talking about it really does help.
it does. It does. Even, when I was messaging you this morning, and I was thinking, I don't know if I can do this, but I knew that I would feel better once I got into, and a lot of it can be, I can't. That's why, yeah, it's hard for me to know what the right thing is to do, because sometimes my brain will say, don't do that. But I know from past experience, I know that sometimes doing things that my brain and body says no to, other things that make me feel better, like all the mental health strategies, like doing exercise, doing self-care, having a bath, doing some meditation, and also, just giving yourself a break, because there's so many things that we're supposed to be doing to help ourselves, but sometimes we're not able to do those things, and that's okay too. If sometimes you get to the end of the week or the start of the week or at any point throughout the week and you just feel like, I can't do anything, it's all right to just not do anything. And that is a real thing in our society, because our worth is based on what we do, and what we achieve. And so if we're suddenly not doing anything or not achieving anything, do we still have worth? And we do. We definitely do. But I think especially as women, we are trained, it's kind of trained to look after people, to make people feel at ease. So if we're not performing those functions, if we're just, and nearly 4 months ago, I had a hysterectomy, and in the recovery after that, I felt very depressed because I couldn't do anything. Yeah. And I realized how much of my self-esteem is tied up in achieving and doing things for people. And friends of mine offered to take my son to school, and I found it really hard to accept, because I didn't know when I would be able to return the favor, and I didn't like to think that I was, that I wouldn't be able, that they were just doing a nice thing for me. I saw a friend of mine at the shops, and she said, oh, I've had a lung infection, and I've been lying on the lounge feeling sorry for myself, and then getting angry at myself for feeling sorry for myself, because I should be more positive and I should be, I feel like I should be doing more. And I said to her, isn't it amazing that we give ourselves such a hard time? And I can see, why would you be happy and positive about having a lung infection? But it's such a thing, you know, when we are bodily or physically unable to do things, our mental health will take a decline, because as part of capitalism, we have to consume or produce in order to have worth. And it's just so silly, but it's so real. It's so real. And yeah, that's another part of having chronic pain. I feel like, oh, maybe if I just thought positive, I could feel better. Well, no, it's a little bit, there's truth in that, sure. But also give yourself permission to feel in pain. Why do we run away from negative feelings when they're just as, you know? And the other thing is that too, that it's all right for other people to have emotions and feelings, but it's not all right for me. And that's how a lot of us feel, not just those of us on the spectrum. We think, oh yeah, it's a hard time at the moment, you're allowed to struggle, but I'm not allowed to struggle, you know. And that's crazy, it really is.
As you're saying that, I don't know if it's a quote or a saying, treat yourself as you would treat a friend, right? It's so, yeah, it's okay for everyone else to go through it, and we'll support them through it. But when we're going through it, are we supporting ourselves in a similar fashion
Yeah,
through it?
no, probably not, because for
We're
some reason,
interesting as a human race. Oh goodness, crazy. Deb, one of my we will wrap up in a bit, but what did the diagnosis mean for you when you got that report stating you have autism spectrum disorder? Did it change things for you in a personal way, or
yes and no, I guess. Yes. And I don't know if it would be different if I was living somewhere like Melbourne, where there is more access to people, medical people, like specialists who understand that autism in women looks different, because I also had a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. And especially when I've accessed mental health services here, they don't want to necessarily talk about the fact that I have autism. They would much rather focus on the fact that I have a previous diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, which I really don't. I mean, a lot of the things are comorbid. So there's commonalities in both of those conditions, but I don't know. Borderline has a bad rap in psychology and psychiatry, in just being people who, you know, perhaps are a little bit hysterical. I don't know. I've certainly had my share of judgment from clinicians on expressing that I have that diagnosis. It hasn't changed a whole lot, but it has in some ways changed a lot, because I've become aware that I need to reduce the amount of, just really keep simple the amount of tasks that I can do, the amount of information that I can take in, the amount of socializing that I can do, to really be kind to myself. And I don't know, I think when there's a lot of sadness involved in an autism diagnosis, because you think, oh, you poor thing, you know, I just felt so sorry for my child and adolescent self, because I struggled so much, but I couldn't put it into words. I didn't have the language to yeah. And I'm thinking again of Tony Atwood. He says, I don't have the ability to tease out a thought from the swirling mass inside my brain, to examine it and then to interpret it for myself, but then put it into language that you will understand. So that is what is happening for any autistic person whenever they communicate with another person. Not only are their thoughts are a bit, so they're getting a thought, they're going, all right, this is what I want to express, and they are taking in information about you. And that's why a lot of people on the spectrum don't like to make eye contact, or have learned ways to work around eye contact, because when I'm talking to someone, if I look into their eyes, then I will receive a whole bunch of information about that person. So when I'm looking at their eyes, I notice, how are they feeling, what are they thinking, and it's too overwhelming for me. It's so intense, eye contact, that it cuts out my ability to cognitively process my own emotions.
Yeah.
So when I had the interview, I asked the guy, I said, do you mind if I don't look at you when you're asking the questions, because it's just too overwhelming? And also I worry, I have it makes me incredibly anxious if I accidentally maintain eye contact for too long.
Yeah.
It really, and my son, when he was about 8, he said, I can't look at people's eyes. And I said, why is that? And he said, because it hurts my heart. And I was like, oh, gosh, I relate to that. And I've learned to look at people's chin or in between their eyes. And sometimes I become really distracted by people's faces. Like, I'll be sort of looking somewhere else, and then I'll be like, oh, look at their earlobe, isn't it? Oh, hang on, get back to the conversation. I'll get really like, oh, what shadow have they got on? Oh, hang on, whoops. Separating the person into sort of, yeah. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for, it's been such a wonderful conversation, and just getting to know a little bit about what it is like for you personally, and how, when your kids are experiencing it, what's happening for you as well. Like, such a complex scenario. But are there any last words you'd like to, for people to take away, for people to be mindful of? Yeah.
I guess try and be gentle to yourself, because I think, especially as women, we know how to be hard on ourselves. We've learned how to think, don't do that, don't be that, be this, be that. Just let yourself be who you are. And it's easy for me to say that. It's harder to do it. But yeah, I think by and large, we all know how to be hard on ourselves. But being gentle and kind and loving to ourselves is a skill that a lot of us have to learn ourselves. Not because it's particularly anything that our parents have done wrong. No, it's just not the way the world works. Like I said before, we're judged on our ability to achieve and consume. And so if we're being kind and gentle to ourselves and self-accepting, then we're not buying stuff. So we're not of use. It's really interesting when you have a look at how capitalism and advertising feed into our self-image, because if we don't consume, then we're not of worth. But we are of worth just the way we are. So, and that's a very hard thing to put into practice, but it's something that I'm really trying to work towards.
Absolutely.
And I thank you for letting me chat to you. You're always so lovely and warm, and I really appreciate it.
Now, I really appreciate, equally what you have to say, and just how, because any conversation, really, we learn from each other rather than, you know, someone being here and someone being here. And I think everyone has something to teach us. And it's nice to be, oh, it's just wonderful to be able to be open to that experience, learn, because to be honest, you never know when it's going to help you out. Not you, but like just in general, when it's going to help people out in different interactions, in situations, from a lot of
Mm.
you've said. For instance, I've been thinking about, so being a speech and language pathologist, we work with a lot of children with autism spectrum or on the autism spectrum disorder, their families, things. And personally, I know I'm very facially expressive, so they're huge. I will smile, I will laugh, everything. And at the best of times I go, no, Adi, don't be doing don't be doing that. Just calm down. Like
Yeah.
with something like that, from what you're saying is so validating to me, going, okay, don't smile too much, or don't, it's overwhelming for someone else, or it can be
Well,
overwhelming.
it can be, but then sometimes it can be, I know for me and for Steffi, having people who are, really enthusiastic and happy to see us is great, because we can already feel at times like we're not validated or needed in a situation. So I would say, keep on being you, keep on being great.
No, thank you. And absolute honor to have this conversation. And I reckon it might be a wonderful segue into a different conversation as well. To, it could be a different topic within life with autism. We'll discuss that after I stop recording. But no, thank you so much, Deb. And to whoever watches this, please feel free to share it. If it resonates with you, share the conversation. It might resonate with a lot of people. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And stop.